You want to see this boy die because you personally want it, not because of the facts. You're a sadist.
Whoa.
You don't really mean you'll kill me, do you?
Got him!
Nice. Wow, that was nice. That was nice. Hey people, how's it going? Welcome to the Funhouse and thank you for joining me for this post-reaction review of 1957's 12 Angry Men. If you haven't already seen my reaction video of 12 Angry Men, the link is in the description below. Now this won't be an exhaustive look at the film. I just wanted to share a little bit more of my thoughts outside of the reaction and acknowledge the principal cast. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. So, 12 Angry Men. Now I learned a lot of interesting things while doing the research for this video. For instance, this story was initially a teleplay that aired live on CBS in September of 1954, and it was written by Reginald Rose. Rose started writing when he was 15. He served 4 years in the US Army during World War II, and in 1951, he sold his first teleplay, which was titled Bus to Nowhere. 4 years later, he sold 12 Angry Men, which was inspired by his personal experience serving on a jury during a manslaughter case. He went on to win an Emmy Award for the 12 Angry Men teleplay, and he earned an Oscar nomination for his adaptation in the Best Adapted Screenplay category. He also shared the Oscar nomination in the Best Picture category with Henry Fonda. Now if you're like me, I'm sure some of you must have wondered, why is it called 12 Angry Men? I mean, technically, only one of them was angry. Now the best explanation that I've seen for the title that makes sense to me is this. Now for movie-going audiences back then, they would have understood that the number 12 was the number of a jury. They were a bit more switched on back then. So they would have known that the film would be a courtroom drama. Now the Angry Men part is the bit that I really like. The Angry Men part of the title is purely a marketing ploy. Angry Men is there to evoke a sense of conflict, and Western stories, primarily, are driven by conflict. So the idea of a jury that's angry is appealing, especially because of the gravity of the case. What are they angry about? Who are they angry with? Are they angry at each other? Are they angry at the judge? Are they angry at the system itself? How does them being angry affect the case that they're involved in? Do you see how many questions I have? It's clever stuff. Now the film was directed by Sidney Lumet, and he was a son born to parents who were veterans of the Yiddish theatre. Lumet followed in his parents' footsteps and made his professional acting debut on the radio at age 4. He then went on to appear in many Broadway productions as a child. After serving 4 years in the US Army during World War II, Lumet returned from service and got involved with the Actors Studio. For his next move, he formed his own theatre workshop, and he began his directorial career by organizing an off-Broadway group. He also worked in summer stock theatre, which refers to resident theatres that only present productions in the summer. The name is a combination of the season and the tradition of staging shows that reuse stock scenery and costumes. This explains a lot. One of the things that struck me about 12 Angry Men was how theatrical it was. By that I mean, the set is a contained environment and the actors are allowed to show off their acting chops. So, let's put it together. It was initially written as a teleplay, and the director established his storytelling fundamentals in the theatre.
Yeah, well, that ought to do it.
Lumet went on to directing for television in 1950 and became known as one of the most prolific and well-respected directors in the business. This was because of his lightning-quick shooting style, due to the high turnover of projects required for television. His prolific output stemmed from his foundation in the theatre. Lumet was a firm believer in rehearsal and preparation. He would even use the rehearsal period, usually 2 weeks, to block scenes with his cinematographer. By the time it came to the shoot, Lumet would only film 1 or 2 takes, which he became world famous for. He became known as the actor's director. I was also surprised to find out that 12 Angry Men was his first feature-length film. Talk about making a first impression.
That's good. That's good. Good.
The film received critical acclaim upon release, but was a box office disappointment in the US. However, it did do better internationally. The film finally found its audience when it aired on television. Lumet became known as one of the Hollywood New Wave directors, which included Martin Scorsese, Robert Altman, and Woody Allen. He's been nominated for 5 Academy Awards, 4 of them for Best Picture, which include 12 Angry Men, Dog Day Afternoon, Network, and The Verdict. He was also nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay for Prince of the City.
Treat Williams is Prince of the City.
The cinematography for this film was done by Boris Kaufman, and he was born into a family of Jewish intellectuals. His 2 brothers, Ziga Vertov and Mikhail Kaufman, were Soviet filmmakers. They specialized in avant-garde and agitprop films. Now, agitprop refers to popular media forms with an explicit political message in favor of communism. Can I never escape you?
Nope.
Agitprop means agitation and propaganda. Kaufman's first Hollywood film as a cinematographer was On the Waterfront, directed by Elia Kazan, and starred Marlon Brando. Kaufman won the Academy Award for Best Black and White Cinematography. He worked with Kazan again on Baby Doll and was nominated a second time. He then worked with Lumet on 12 Angry Men. They would work together another 6 times, including the film The Pawnbroker, which was Morgan Freeman's feature film debut. So we start to see that with a core team of such heavy hitters, why this film has stood the test of time. Lumet portrays consistent themes in his films, namely the fragility of justice and police corruption. He liked to make films about men, the little guy, who summons the courage to challenge the system. We see these sentiments echoed with Henry Fonda being willing to stand alone with his verdict of I don't know. I also noticed that there were no capital letters in the credits, only common or lowercase letters. I'd like to think that it's a symbolic statement, that when it comes to justice, we are all common men. There is, or at least there should be, a level playing field. Now, one of the things that impressed me the most about the film was the handling of the issue of prejudice. I love the fact that the ethnic identity of the accused was never revealed. Here's why I think it's such a genius move. In my reaction, I predicted that there would be racial issues in the film. I did this reluctantly because I'm fully aware that we've been taught a lot of BS on this topic. Secondly, that's the word everyone uses, so who am I to change words in the lexicon of the English language? Also, because of the time period of the film, and this came out of Hollywood, who could fault me for concluding that? Needless to say, I was pleasantly surprised by the skillful handling of the topic. Now, we've been taught to associate the word race with skin, but if you go back far enough, you'd hear people say things like the Irish race, or the English race, or the Scottish race, or the French race. Now, some of you are glitching right now. You're saying to yourself, what is this guy talking about? He just mentioned a bunch of white people and he used the word race. Well, yes I did. Because associating race with skin exclusively is a fairly new phenomenon. To refer to one's race was more than just skin. What were your values? What were your ethics? How do you dress? How do you present yourself before others? How do you speak? Is every other word a cuss word? What was your hygiene like? So what does that tell us? Race was about more than just skin. It was about culture. It was about the tribe. For example, do you know that the Irish were treated poorly by the English as well as during the development of America? Years ago, I came across a story. During slavery in America, a wealthy man wanted to develop a certain region, but it was on some swampland. To accomplish his work, he would have to drain the swamp. While discussing this with a partner or foreman or whoever it was, the other person says to the wealthy man, "That's dangerous work. So are you going to get some slave to do that?" The wealthy man who owned slaves said to the other man, he said, "No way, slaves are expensive. I'm going to use the Irish." And that brings me to my point. Prejudice can be found anywhere, even in the same tribe. An aristocrat with white skin can look down on a peasant with white skin, which was the case in European history. This is the beautiful handling of the issue in 12 Angry Men. The issue was prejudice, not skin. Juror number 10's disdain for the accused stemmed from the fact that he was from another tribe, the fact that he was a slum kid. It wasn't to do with skin. Not necessarily. In the UK, some white English people can't stand white Scottish people. And some white Scottish people can't stand white English people. Some white Welsh people can't stand white English people. And it gets really interesting when white people from London can't stand white people from the north of England. Why? because it's about the tribe. It's about values, ethics, conduct. Tackling the issue of prejudice in 12 Angry Men is operating on a higher philosophical level, because prejudice can show itself in any form, anywhere, even within the tribe itself. In my opinion, to approach the prejudicial issue in 12 Angry Men by focusing on skin or gender diminishes the potency of the otherwise high bar that is set. It may be a relevant observation in the right context, but for generations now, we haven't been taught to do that.
They come over here running for their life, and before they can take a deep breath, they're telling us how to run the show, huh? Boy, the arrogance of this guy.
We've been taught to associate injustice with skin or that which is betwixt thine legs. The high bar set in the film demands that the common man stomps out prejudice in all its forms when serving the justice system. Why? Because it's a privilege to be part of such a justice system. A system that demands that a man is innocent until proven guilty. A system that demands that every man deserves a fair trial. A system that demands that a man's guilt must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. A system that demands that
No jury can declare a man guilty unless it's sure.
Mwah. Chef's kiss.
That's a spicy meatball!
To be honest, I wouldn't want to see a modern day version of this story, because no doubt they would focus on skin or gender. What's the greater calling? A justice system that demands a high standard of virtues from its citizens? A justice system that punishes the wicked and protects the innocent? Or a justice system where its so-called virtues are rooted in skin or that which is betwixt thine legs? I know which one I would choose. Now, let's get into the actors because we have some giants here. So we have juror number 1, played by Martin Balsam. This guy was an actor. His professional debut was in 1941 in a production called The Play's the Thing. After service in World War II, he resumed his acting career in New York. And by 1948, he was selected by Elia Kazan to become a member of the newly founded Actors Studio. He was a Broadway veteran, appearing in many stage productions well into his screen career. He appeared many times on television, appearing in shows like
The Twilight Zone.
Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and Murder, She Wrote. He made his big screen debut in an uncredited part under the direction of Elia Kazan in On the Waterfront. In 1957, he gave his breakout performance in 12 Angry Men and would collaborate with Lumet 2 more times. He would appear in The Anderson Tapes and Murder on the Orient Express. He went on famously to play Milton Arbogast in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. He's appeared in notable films like Breakfast at Tiffany's, Tora Tora Tora, The Taking of Pelham 123,
4 desperate, heavily armed men seize control of the train.
and All the President's Men.
Oh, that's Woodward's Garage Freak, his source in the executive. Garage Freak?
He also appeared in potentially the most important film of his career outside of 12 Angry Men.
The Delta Force.
That's right.
Starring Chuck Norris
Loud and clear.
and Lee Marvin. The Delta Force.
Martin Balsam.
Because the stakes are more than pride.
Don't.
Robert Forster.
This is a hijack! Heads down! This is a hand grenade!
The Delta Force.
Now here's a fun fact. Balsam starred in both the original Cape Fear 1962 and the 1991 remake by Martin Scorsese. His co-stars from the original, Gregory Peck and Robert Mitchum, also appeared in the 1991 version. He was also the original voice of HAL 9000 in 2001: A Space Odyssey. But after his lines had been recorded, Kubrick felt that the voice sounded too American, so he hired Douglas Rain instead. And the rest is history.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
He also starred in several poliziotesco films in the 1970s. Now these are a subgenre of crime action films that emerged in Italy in the late 60s and reached the height of its popularity in the 70s. Now the film would obviously be redubbed for the Italian market. But get this, he would then re-record his voice again for the English language exports.
That's what real actors do.
And wait, there's more. He even starred in 2 Italian TV series. Like I said, the man was an actor. One of his final appearances was in the 1994 parody film Silence of the Hams. It was a mashup of Silence of the Lambs and Psycho, and the film paid homage to his role as Detective Arbogast in the latter. Over his career, Balsam had won an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for his work in 1,000 Clowns in 1966. He won a Tony Award for Best Actor in a Play in 1968 for his work in You Know I Can't Hear You When the Water's Running. He was also nominated for 2 BAFTA Awards for Best Actor in a Supporting Role for The Taking of Pelham 123 and All the President's Men. Martin Balsam passed away in 1996 at the age of 76. And that's just one actor, 1 out of 12.
There was nothing for the Scarlet Pumpernickel to do.
Blow his brains out.
Juror number 2 was played by John Fiedler, or Fiedler. You're gonna see a theme here. All these guys were veteran New York actors. And by New York, I mean Broadway, which says everything. Fiedler's acting career spanned 55 years, performing for stage, television, film, and radio. He was a member of the original cast in the Broadway play, A Raisin in the Sun, which starred Sidney Poitier. The play went on to be adapted for the big screen in 1961, and also for the small screen in 1988. Fiedler reprised his role as Carl Lindner in both versions. He made numerous television appearances in popular shows like The Twilight Zone, Columbo, Perry Mason, The Munsters, Get Smart, Star Trek, Three's Company, The Golden Girls, and Cheers.
And they're always glad you came.
He's worked frequently on Walt Disney Productions, lending his voice to productions like Robin Hood, The Rescuers, The Fox and the Hound, and The Emperor's New Groove. But his most recognizable voice work is as Piglet across several Winnie the Pooh features. Juror number 4 was played by E.G. Marshall. This is another veteran of the Broadway stage, starring in many major productions. He was also among the first group of actors selected to form the Actors Studio. From what I learned, the stage was his first priority, but he had appeared in 15 productions for the screen before appearing in 12 Angry Men. He had appeared in a film called The Left Hand of God, which starred Humphrey Bogart and another actor who also appeared in 12 Angry Men.
I could have you flayed with bullwhips, hang you up by your thumbs.
Marshall also appeared in Tora Tora Tora, alongside 12 Angry Men co-star Martin Balsam. Some of you may know by now that I don't shy away from controversy, and I'm about to make a controversial statement right now. In my opinion, E.G. Marshall gives the finest performance in the film. By finest, I mean the most subtle and nuanced. His was a sophisticated character, but I also got the sense that he was a sophisticated actor. I was impressed with his stillness and commanding air when it was his time to shine. He made himself small when necessary to allow for others to shine, but when it was his turn to shine, he was an acting monster. His performance here encapsulates what I love about old movies. I love the snappy, sharp rhythm of old school line delivery, and E.G. Marshall was a boss at it.
The boy admitted going out of the house at 8 o'clock on the night of the murder after being slapped several times by his father. He talked with his friends for about an hour, leaving them at 9:45. You've made some excellent points, but I still believe the boy is guilty of murder, and I have 2 reasons.
Juror number 5 was played by Jack Klugman. Like his fellow cast members, he served in World War II, and he started acting in 1950. He appeared in shows like The Twilight Zone, in which he played the starring role 4 times. He played a guest starring role in The Defenders, which is a courtroom drama, and he won his first Primetime Emmy Award for his guest starring role in the show. He also appeared in
The Fugitive.
Yes, The Fugitive was a TV series first.
The name, Dr. Richard Kemble. Richard Kemble ponders his fate as he looks at the world for the last time.
And he also appeared in 2 episodes of The Untouchables.
The Untouchables.
After starring on Broadway in The Odd Couple, he reprised his role when the play was adapted for television and it ran for 5 seasons. He then went on to star in the television series Quincy M.E. Despite his ongoing battle with cancer, Klugman continued to perform on stage and for the screen until his failing health didn't allow him to. His final on-screen performance was in 2010, a film called Camera Obscura. By the time he died at age 90, he was the last surviving member of the 12 Angry Men cast. Throughout his career, he's earned 1 Golden Globe Award, 3 Primetime Emmy Awards, and he was nominated 7 other times, 1 BAFTA Award nomination, and 1 Tony Award nomination. Now here's a fun fact. After serving in World War II and he started pursuing acting in New York, he shared an apartment with an ex-GI who went on to become a notable actor himself, the one and only Charles Bronson.
You can't have both of us. Let me.
Juror number 6 was played by Edward Binns. Another veteran of the stage, Binns was also a member of the newly founded Actors Studio. Are we starting to see a pattern yet? Binns was also a serviceman in the Army Air Force. After service, he appeared in a number of Broadway plays and started appearing in films in the early 1950s. He had 6 credits before appearing in 12 Angry Men, the 6th film titled Beyond a Reasonable Doubt, which was directed by Fritz Lang. Yes, that Fritz Lang. Binns did quite a bit of work in television, appearing in well-known shows like The Twilight Zone, The Fugitive, The Untouchables, Perry Mason, and Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. Notable theatrical features he's appeared in are Judgment at Nuremberg and Patton. Also, if you missed it, look out for him in Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest. He's playing one of the detectives. He went on to work with Sidney Lumet 2 more times, starring in Failsafe,
Jack, you must turn back,
and The Verdict. Binns was known for portraying competent, hardworking, and purposeful characters throughout his career. Juror number 7 was played by Jack Warden. Now I found his casting in 12 Angry Men very interesting because the character seemed close to him, as if he was Juror number 7. In the reaction, I referred to the character as a street hustler type.
I don't know, it's all been said.
He seems like some kind of street hustler.
Well, look at his record.
So perhaps he was that kid too. Interestingly, he was expelled from school for brawling and ended up being a professional boxer. He fought 13 bouts at the welterweight level under the name Johnny Costello, but never achieved great success. From what I could deduce, he had a bit of trouble finding his place in the world. He worked as a tugboat deckhand, a lifeguard, and a nightclub bouncer.
Just like me.
In 1938, he joined the United States Navy. Then in 1941, he joined the United States Merchant Marines. Then in 1942, he moved to the United States Army, serving as a paratrooper in the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment, which was part of the 101st Airborne Division during World War II. Here's a fun fact. On the eve of the D-Day invasion, Warden shattered his leg during a nighttime practice jump. This made him unfit for duty. Sadly, he lost many of his friends to that operation, but Warden spent 8 months in the hospital. It was then he read a Clifford Odets play and decided to become an actor. I tell you, life is so strange. Imagine if he didn't shatter his leg during a nighttime practice jump, and he was fit for the D-Day invasion. How many other potentially great artists perished on that day? Warden went on to play a paratrooper in the movie That Kind of Woman. After military service, he moved to New York and studied acting under the GI Bill. Wait, can you still do that? Anyway, the rest is history. The man has been in so many films and TV shows, it's ridiculous. Before he starred in 12 Angry Men, he appeared in a film called The Bachelor Party, in which E.G. Marshall also made an appearance. He starred in a film called Run Silent, Run Deep, which I only know of because of an Archer reference to submarine movies.
Have you ever seen a submarine movie?
Operation Petticoat, Das Boot, Run Silent, Run Deep.
Ooh, Yellow Submarine.
Yellow Submarine! There's so many submarine movies.
He also appeared in The Thin Red Line, which is an adaptation of the novel of the same name. The novel was adapted a second time for film in 1998 and was directed by Terrence Malick. Warden also appeared in The Verdict.
Frankie, listen to me because I'm done with you. I got you a good case.
Sharing the screen again with 12 Angry Men alumni, Edward Binns. And it was his second outing with Sidney Lumet, who directed the film. His accolades include 2 Academy Award nominations, 1 BAFTA Award nomination, and he was the winner of the Primetime Emmy Award for Brian's Song. Juror number 9 was played by Joseph Sweeney. I find him interesting not just as a character but also an actor. He was born in 1884, so his experience of the world must have been so vastly different from the other actors. I mean, this man saw the transition from horse and cart to full-on mass communication through radio. He saw 2 world wars, the financial boom of post-war America, the massive growth in corporations and industries, mass marketing coming out of Madison Avenue, the rise of audio in cinema, the rise of television, not to mention the Great Depression. What a ride that must have been. Anyway, there's not much info on him, but Sweeney was mostly a successful theatre actor. Here's a fun fact. In this version of 12 Angry Men, he's actually reprising his role as Juror Number 9.
Oh, forgive me, gentlemen. I didn't mean to keep you waiting. All right.
Oh, forgive me, gentlemen. I didn't mean to keep you waiting.
As I said before, this was originally a live television play back in 1954, and Sweeney was part of the original cast. In my opinion, Sweeney plays the role of Juror Number 9 with a little bit more grit. In the teleplay, his physical look is a little bit more worn. It's as if he's been battered by the world. He looked more like a Depression-era old man than the polite, smart, clean-shaven old man in this film adaptation. Sweeney proved his status as a working actor, appearing in at least 12 television productions during the last year of his life. He died in 1963 at the age of 79. The infamous Juror Number 10 was played by Ed Begley. This is another actor who would have experienced the massive transformation of the US during the 20th century. Begley was born in 1901. In his early years, Begley ran away from home several times and found work at carnivals, fairs, and small circuses. He also did little odd jobs and eventually joined the US Navy, in which he served for 4 years during World War I. He began his acting career on Broadway and also lent his voice to radio. In his teens, he went on to star in established TV shows like Rawhide,
Move 'em on, hit 'em up, move 'em on, hit 'em up, Rawhide.
The Virginian, The Dick Van Dyke Show, The Fugitive, Gunsmoke, and Bonanza. He also appeared in many film productions like Hang 'em High,
Hang him.
starring Clint Eastwood,
Jed Cooper. They shot him. They even hanged him, but they couldn't kill him.
and Billion Dollar Brain, starring Michael Caine.
What does he do? Tell fortunes?
My brain says the hour is at hand, and my brain is never wrong. Strong! Strong! Strong!
As I pointed out in my reaction video, he's the father of veteran television actor Ed Begley Jr.
Easy as proverbial pie.
Juror Number 11 is played by George Voskovec. His role in 12 Angry Men is a fascinating one because art is imitating life. Voskovec had become an American citizen just 2 years prior, so in my opinion this gave him a unique perspective that would inform his creation of the character. Voskovec had fled socialist Czechoslovakia, so he was in a privileged position to compare which standard of justice was superior. Voskovec started his career in Czechoslovakia, putting his hand to acting, writing, and directing. He was part of a theatre group called Liberated Theatre, which was disbanded due to the Munich Agreement in 1938. He starred in 72 movies, the first 5 of them being Czech. His most notable film outside of 12 Angry Men is The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, starring Richard Burton. Juror Number 12 was played by
Bright. He's a common ignorant slob. He don't even speak good English.
He doesn't even know how to speak English.
Surprised?
What kind of a man are you playing like this with a human being's life?
You can't talk like that to me.
I can talk like that to you.
If you want to vote not guilty, then do so because you are convinced that the man is not guilty.
And if you think he is guilty, then vote that way. But don't you have the guts to do what you think is right?
Say it. Why do you vote not guilty?
Because!
Juror Number 12 was played by Robert Webber. Like others of the 12 Angry Men alumni, Webber served in the US military during World War II. After 12 Angry Men, he went on to star in many film and television productions. In the realm of television, he made appearances in popular shows like The Rifleman,
The Rifleman. Starring Chuck Connors.
Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Defenders, The Fugitive, Kojak, Ironside, Quincy M.E., a show in which 12 Angry Men alumni Jack Klugman played the lead character. He appeared in many films, but the one that interests me is The Nun and the Sergeant, I haven't seen the film, but I have read the premise. It's the Dirty Dozen before the Dirty Dozen.
Train them, excite them, arm them, and turn them loose on the Nazi High Command. The Dirty Dozen.
Weber plays a sergeant who recruits 12 Marines from the brig and trains them to blow up a tunnel behind North Korean lines. Later he would play a general who dislikes Lee Marvin's character in the Dirty Dozen.
I think you know very well I was never in favor of you leading this operation, so I can't say that I'm disappointed in your performance.
And so the moment has come that you've all been waiting for. Every actor I've mentioned is well worth their props due, but it's time to acknowledge the heavy hitters. Juror number 8 needs no introduction. Mr. Henry Fonda, ladies and gentlemen. Now we all know that Henry Fonda's the man.
The man!
Fonda's career began at the age of 20. The story goes, his mother's friend, Dodie Brando, that's Marlon Brando's mother, recommended that he try out for a part in a play called You and I. Fonda became fascinated with the stage and worked on everything he could, including set construction. In 1928, Fonda headed east to pursue success. He quickly became a valued member of the University Players, which was a summer stock theatre company. Later he made his way to New York, where he became roommates with James Stewart. Yes, that James Stewart. They both went on the grind, honing their skills on Broadway. But the Great Depression hit and they both faced tough times. But in 1935, Fonda got his first break when he starred in an adaptation of the play, The Farmer Takes a Wife. He'd already gotten recognition in the Broadway production of the same name, so he was reprising his role. Fonda finally gained the momentum he needed. He was appearing in 3, sometimes 5 productions per year until he went into military service during World War II. Fonda was admired for his everyman persona. He was the guy you knew, the guy next door. Because of the era, he appeared in many westerns, including those of John Ford. After the war, Fonda took a break from movies and enjoyed life a little. He hung out with longtime friend James Stewart and other stars, including Nat King Cole, who gave his family piano lessons. Fonda kicked things off again on the screen in 1946. He played Wyatt Earp in My Darling Clementine, which was directed by John Ford. He continued making films with 20th Century Fox until his 7-year contract expired. He refused another long-term contract and focused on Broadway. He was absent from films for, get this, 8 years. He returned by reprising his role in a screen adaptation of Mr. Rogers, which was also directed by John Ford. On the set of Mr. Rogers, John Ford, known for being harsh with his actors, ended up punching Fonda. They had creative differences about the project, and Ford, an alcoholic, had a tall drink in his hand when the incident occurred. The two never worked together again. In 1956, Fonda worked with legendary director Alfred Hitchcock, appearing in The Wrong Man. The next year, something special happened. Fonda starred in a low-budget film that was an adaptation of a teleplay that aired on CBS 3 years prior. That film was 12 Angry Men. This was Fonda's first time producing. Because the film didn't do well initially, Fonda vowed never to produce again. He thought that failure as a producer would equal doom for him as an actor. But 12 Angry Men did find its audience and was ultimately deemed a success. So he did produce again. He produced a TV series called The Deputy, which ran from 1959 to 1961. Fonda also starred in the series. In the 60s, he starred in war movies as well as other westerns. He starred in war movies like The Longest Day and The Battle of the Bulge. He also starred in Failsafe, where he worked with Sidney Lumet again.
What do we do, Mr. Chairman? What do we say to the dead?
In this era, his most significant western role was as the notorious bastard Frank in Once Upon a Time in the West. This was a role against type for Fonda. He was the guy next door. He was the everyman, the holdout juror number 8 in 12 Angry Men. Now here he is playing this son of a bitch.
The land grabber.
The story goes that Sergio Leone rejected Fonda's suggestion to wear brown contact lenses. This was because Leone wanted close-ups of Fonda's disarming, innocent blue eyes, juxtaposed with the vicious actions of the character.
Good call.
Because Fonda was an absolute monster in that film. By the 70s, many aging actors were suffering waning careers. But Fonda had switched gears, continuing to appear in stage, foreign, and television productions. and the man was approaching his 70s. In '76, he appeared in the television production of Collision Course. It told the story of the volatile relationship between President Harry Truman and General MacArthur, with Fonda playing the latter. This is relevant because Fonda starred alongside 12 Angry Men alumni E.G. Marshall in that production. He ended the '70s starring in a number of disaster movies like The Swarm and Meteor. By the 1980s, Fonda's health had declined, but he continued to act in television productions. His final big screen performance was in the film On Golden Pond, for which he won the Academy Award for Best Actor. After On Golden Pond, Fonda's health started to rapidly decline. Still, he appeared in the television drama Summer Solstice, which was the final performance of his illustrious career. Fonda died of heart disease in 1982. He had suffered from prostate cancer, but it wasn't the direct cause of his death. Fonda's career spanned across an incredible 5 decades. That's 50 years, people. His accolades include 1 Academy Award, 1 Honorary Academy Award, 1 Academy Award nomination, 1 BAFTA Award, 5 Primetime Emmy Award nominations, 1 Golden Globe Award, which is the Honorary Cecil B. DeMille Award, 1 Golden Globe Award, a Grammy Award, 1 Tony Award and 1 Tony Award nomination, 1 Special Tony Award, which is an honorary award, and an American Film Institute Award, which is a Lifetime Achievement Award. Here's a fun fact. Fonda starred in a film called The Trail of the Lonesome Pine, which was the first Technicolor film to have outdoor sequences. And so we come to the final of the principal cast members. I think all the actors are fantastic in this film. They were all veterans who had put in the work, and they came together and something special happened. Now, Henry Fonda may have been the man, but I think the most captivating performance came from the man who played juror number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Lee J. Cobb. Now, I'd never heard of this man before. In fact, I didn't remember seeing him in anything, and that's why I like this film. With the exception of Henry Fonda, whom I hadn't seen in anything outside of Once Upon a Time in the West, I wasn't familiar with any of the other cast members. Of course, after doing the research, I realized I had seen things that they'd been in. It's almost a little bit unfair to say that Cobb was the most captivating of all the performers, because the role was written so well. You could argue that a lesser actor wouldn't have been as impactful. Speaking of which, the final outcome for the character in the teleplay is vastly different from this version. Without spoiling anything, I recommend you go take a look. I think Cobb's physical appearance was partly why he stood out. It's a stark difference from the actor in the teleplay. Cobb is a lot bigger and heavy-set than the other principal actors, and yet there's a weakness about him, like when he tried to relate to juror number 5 after just berating him about the change in his vote.
Glad you're not one of those lets these emotional appeals influence him.
Or when juror number 6 threatens to lay him out if he speaks to the old man in a disrespectful manner again.
If you say stuff like that to him again, I'm gonna lay you out.
Cobb just backs down. Even juror number 4 takes a jab at him.
You're just trying to bait me.
He did an excellent job.
By the end, when he breaks down, the viewer feels his pain, or they're at least empathetic towards him. We've all been there. There were times when we could have just said, "I'm sorry," but we didn't. There were times when we were a bit too harsh to the people we're supposed to care about. There were times when we should have let our thoughts and feelings be known, but we just kept it inside. Now, I'm still going back and forth on this, but I have a question. Is juror number 3 the one who's guilty, and he's projecting his guilt onto the accused? Or is his son guilty for alienating him, and he's projecting his son's guilt onto the accused? I think there's an even deeper layer there. What if he's placing the guilty verdict on the entire younger generation? Let me know what you think in the comments.
Kids, work your heart out.
Like many of the 12 Angry Men alumni, Cobb began his career on the stage, performing in Summerstock Theatre productions. During this time, he starred alongside Elia Kazan, a name we know well by now, in Clifford Odets' first play, Waiting for Lefty. Cobb eventually gained widespread recognition playing Willie Loman in the original production of Arthur Miller's play, Death of a Salesman. Elia Kazan was the director. Miller even praised Cobb as the greatest dramatic actor I ever saw. Miller had envisaged the title character as a small man, but for Cobb he changed the description from shrimp to walrus. During wartime, Cobb served in the US Air Force, and he had hopes of becoming a pilot. In the end, he transferred to the 1st Motion Picture Unit, which strikes me as a rabbit hole that I do not have the energy or the time to go down. Cobb made it into films in the 1930s, and sometimes played older or middle-aged characters, even at a younger age. By the time Cobb starred in 12 Angry Men, he was already an Oscar nominee for playing Johnny Friendly in On the Waterfront, which was directed by Elia Kazan.
Friendly! Come on out of there!
You talk yourself in the river.
Cobb went on to star in many film and television shows, films including The Left Hand of God, which I'm mentioning again because of the badass poster for the film. I mean, look at that. Sick! Remember, E.G. Marshall also starred in that one. Cobb also starred in The Brothers Karamazov, How the West Was Won, which also starred 12 Angry Men alumni Henry Fonda. He starred in McKenna's Gold, Our Man Flint, Day of the Owl,
Il branco di oche.
The Liberation of L.B. Jones, and The Exorcist.
The Exorcist.
Cobb's most significant appearance on television was a 4-seasons run as a member of the principal cast in The Virginian, a show in which several of the 12 Angry Men alumni would appear. Like Martin Balsam, Cobb appeared in several Polizio Tesco films. Films like Mark of the Cop, Mark Shoots First, Cross Shot, and Nick the Sting. The final two, Cross Shot and Nick the Sting, were released at least 2 months after his death. Cobb's accolades include 2 Academy Award nominations, 2 Golden Globe Award nominations, and 3 Primetime Emmy Award nominations. Here's a fun fact. Cobb played King Lear on Broadway, which went down as the longest run for the play in Broadway history, which was a total of 72 performances. The role of the Fool was played by none other than Star Trek Deep Space Nine alumni Rene Auberjonois.
You pulled me into this case, and now you're stuck with me.
There's so much more to extract from this film. There are so many little details to point out and interpret, like the line when Cobb's character says,
"He stabbed his own father 4 inches into the chest."
That is great foreshadowing for what will be revealed about the character later. There's also the fact that he's so precise as to say,
4 inches into the chest.
That alludes to a deep wound, which he himself is suffering from. But his wound is metaphorical. Then there's the cool and energetic 7-minute long take at the beginning. It's no A Touch of Evil, but it's a solid effort for a first-time director. There's also the final shot of the film, when they all go their separate ways, back into the world. The shot's significant because you have to look closely to see the 12, because they blend in with all the other civilians in the frame. In the deliberation room, they held a man's life in their hands. They were almost like a pantheon of gods deciding the fate of this young man. Literally, does he live or does he die? But as we leave the judicial building, each man is just another Joe going about his business, like everybody else. Also, in that moment, you can see that Cobb was the last one to make his way down the steps. In the beginning, he was eager to get it over with and leave. But there he is. Now, he's the last one to leave. His physicality is superb here. He's almost like a young man who's been disciplined by his father. In this case, the father being Justice. He's emerged from the Hall of Justice a different man. A man with some soul searching to do. He's a man who needs to make some changes in his life. Then there's one of my favorite moments in the film. After Cobb breaks down and the men leave the room to deliver their verdict, Fonda assists him to put on his jacket. He didn't berate him or mock him. He showed him grace. Why? Because they're in it together. They're citizens privileged enough to be a part of a justice system that demands the highest virtues from them. A system that proved itself on that day in that room. And not only were they witnesses of it, they were partakers of it. Mwah! Chef's kiss.
That's a spicy meatball!
Then there's the poise and discipline of the writer and director to never reveal the names of the characters except for two. Fonda, juror number 8, the one who held the line until justice could assert itself. And Sweeney, juror number 9, the one who was experienced and wise. He knew what it meant to stand alone against the group. And when he saw the courage of juror number 8, it inspired him to be the one to change his vote and turn the tide. There's also a great moment that I noticed after the fact with juror number 5. When the judge says there will be no consideration for mercy after they've announced their verdict, juror number 5 looks on at the accused with pity in his eyes. This is a very nuanced moment because none of the other jurors in the frame are looking at the accused, only juror number 5. Later we learned that juror number 5 was a slum kid himself. Also, in the deliberation room, he's the 8th one to raise his hand on the initial vote, which indicates his hesitance to vote guilty and condemn the young man. Yep, you know what's coming next. Chef's kiss.
A bottle of fettuccine in 1981.
That's a spicy meatball!
I was also intrigued by the judge. His low energy delivery of such high stakes to the jurors raised the question as to why. Is he a veteran judge and this is just another day, another case for him? Or is his low energy delivery to add sobriety to the gravity of the situation? Is he just jaded or is it strategic? I still haven't decided on that one. Whew! This video is going to be the death of me. Then there's the "so long" line at the end. For these men, it was touch and go there for a while. There was so much at stake. A man's life was in the balance. Juror number 9 stood with juror number 8 when no one else did. They built a rapport. Because of their willingness to make a stand, the accused was able to live another day. But no one will ever know what they'd accomplished. All they had was that moment. McCardle learned the name of the man who had the courage to stand up to the group. And Davis learned the name of the man who he inspired to stand with him and aided him in turning the tide. And then the moment was over. They were now going back to their lives. Whatever issues that were plaguing them were still there, waiting for them to return. Whatever insecurities they had, they still needed to battle those demons. Outside of this encounter, they probably don't have anything in common. It's also likely they will never see each other again. So long.
Well, so long. So long.
Not only is there plenty to extract from the artistic aspects of the film, like cinematography, acting, symbolism.
I called the weather bureau this morning. This is going to be the hottest day of the year.
Pacing, costume, setting. There's also the cross-pollination of working with other great artists, like Elia Kazan, and working together again on projects further down the road. It's endless. 12 Angry Men is a masterclass in pretty much every aspect of visual storytelling, and is well worth its place in the Hall of Fame in cinema. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. Stay tuned for more movie reactions because I've got some great ideas for the channel. If you did get any value here, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. So long.
Well, so long.